It is a grey day in the studio. Is that rain coming through? Can you hear that? Too loud? Bit of rain on the mic. Pretty dark too. That's better. Welcome to the studio. Welcome back. It is a pleasure to have your company here once again. I've got a bit of a different kind of video to share with you here this time around, and this is a new one for me. What am I doing? Well, in this video, I'm gonna paint my first master copy. Can I say that? Can I call it that? It's a copy. It's a copy of a famous painting by Lucy Kemp Welch, and it's called In the Orchard. Now, the original of this painting hangs in the Art Gallery of Christchurch in the South Island of New Zealand. And I'm in the South Island of New Zealand, and I thought, well, why don't I take some shots of this and maybe do a copy of this painting? And it just so happens that this painting is one of my wife's favorite paintings. So I was gonna give her a little bit of a surprise and give her this painting as a gift for her birthday. So why do a copy? Well, if you're anything like me and you're hungry to just keep pushing yourself and really stretch creatively and always try to take on new skills and develop your techniques, then this is a really good way of going about that. Because there's something that the old masters did. They had a particular flair with the brush. They applied paint in a particular way. They had certain color combinations or compositional techniques. Success leaves clues, and those master works from the past, if we imitate, emulate, or even copy the old masters, maybe some of that will rub off on us, and we can learn a new trick, a new technique, and apply that to our own work. So right off the bat, this isn't art, okay? This is just an exercise, and this was just an opportunity for me to learn something new and just push myself a little bit here, try something different, and just see where it goes. So I'm really excited to share this little journey with you and my first master copy. Hopefully the rain's not coming through too bad in the narration. It's a really windy grey day here in New Zealand, but we'll press on. The show must go on. Oh, and incidentally, if you want to watch a longer version of this video, then you can find that right now on my Patreon page. It clocks in at over 2 hours long. And in fact, it's not the only 2-hour video that I've uploaded this month to Patreon. There is hours and hours of content that I upload just about every month on my Patreon page. Link is down below. Check it out. It's only $5 a month. More painting content than you can shake a brush at. I hope you enjoy this. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe to this channel. If you like this kind of content and you want to learn some new stuff about oil painting, then hey, click that like button and leave me a comment down below. Click that notification bell so you're notified when I upload a new video. But let's get straight into it. I hope you enjoy this video. Now, in an effort to thin out my subscribers and give the trolls something to chew on, I'm going to put the projection of this image at the start of this video and let you know my dirty little secret. Now here I am projecting the painting directly on the canvas because, as I said in the beginning, this isn't art, this is just an exercise. I'm trying to loosen up my brushwork and I want to get straight onto it. So I hope you'll forgive this little hack. And now that you know I'm a hack, well, hopefully you'll still enjoy the video and you'll stick around till the end. Now what I try to do is get the edges of the image aligned to the canvas, and I faithfully go around every detail that I want to end up in the final version. Now, doing this painting was a bit like detective work. I had to try to work out what the artist Lucy Kemp Welch would have used in her famous painting in the orchard, and I have no idea. But this is something that I think is pretty close to what they may have used in the 19th century, with the exception of just a few colors. And I'll talk to you about these colors throughout the video. But I've listed them here on the screen if you want to pause and take some notes. In addition to not knowing exactly what was on Welch's palette, I'm not too sure her methodology either. So I'm going to stick to my own here for the initial stages of the painting, beginning with whatever is furthest away and working my way forward. So here I see a little bit of sky sneaking through in the top left-hand corner of the painting, so I mix up some simple gray blues using my earth tones and ultramarine. Now this is pretty far from white, and one of the tricks with this painting is balancing out those tones. I don't want to go too bright in those initial stages. I'm trying to mute everything from the outset. That way I can build in an interesting tonal dynamic and really amplify my highlights and my shadows. But more on that when it comes time to add the sunlight. Now this is a technique that I'm not used to. I really am fighting the temptation to get out the tiny little brushes. Sure, I paint reasonably loose for the block end, but this is kind of ridiculous. I'm using some brushes here that are about 1 inch, at the smallest about ½ an inch, but some of them are even bigger, and mostly they're flats and filberts, all bristles at this stage. And in analyzing those photographs of the original painting, I noticed that there are clear, concise statements made with those brush marks. I have the tendency generally to fiddle with my brushwork and continue to go back over the surface and add multiple dabs and try and blend between strokes. But when I observe Lucy Kemp Welch's painting up close, I notice that there is this beautiful fragmented color and just gorgeous, confident strokes with real thickness and body. So here, I think part of the secret will be using more paint and continually reloading that brush. But it's the kind of brush which is crucial, and I made some discoveries along the way. I wish I had Lucy Kemp Welch's brain to pick right now. I wish I could ask her all sorts of things about how she created this amazing work of art. But here, as I said, it's a bit of detective work to just really analyze that surface and then ask myself with real intensity, what could have made that stroke? Now, it really was clunky in the initial stages, and it took a while to find my feet and land upon the appropriate brush for the right kind of mark, and you'll be shocked at how disgusting and gross the brush is. But more on that when we get to it. Now, I really appreciate your company. Thank you so much for spending this time with me here in the studio. If you haven't already done so, then please do me a huge favor and subscribe to this channel. Make sure you click that like button and the bell notification icon so you're notified when I upload a new video. It takes ages to make this kind of content, and I really appreciate you supporting me by doing that. Okay, back to painting. In addition to the clear and concise, confident brushwork, I was noticing how it started to identify and communicate planes in the form, particularly in the white horse. I'm going to need multiple colors for this, so to mix up the colors for the white horse, it's amazing how many different colors I was seeing in the original. I've got blues here, all sorts of different shades of light brown, and then some beautiful pink notes for that sunlight coming through. Now, in order to communicate the light, I needed an extra dimension with the color, and one thing I didn't anticipate was the heat that would be required, so I decided to add a couple of other colors to my palette, and here I've got Cadmium Red Light and Cadmium Lemon. This will add the punch that I need to communicate that dappled light filtering through the trees. It's at this point in the painting process that I stumbled upon something, which was this chip brush. Now, this is one of the cheapest brushes you can buy, and this particular one only cost me about 50 cents. Now, it does lose a lot of bristles, and it's pretty ratty looking, but it was giving me a quality of mark that was extraordinary. It was carrying a lot of paint, but it had some really beautiful broken edges and was blending really nicely into surrounding strokes. I ended up opting for this brush for the vast majority of the painting. After fumbling around for ages with some really beautiful bristles and filberts, mainly from Rosemary & Co., I ended up switching to this brush, and I felt it was giving me just a really nice quality. Now, don't tell Rosemary & Co. I said that, because I do really love their brushes, but there's something about this that I thought would give me the edge. Now, of course, I do have to go back on occasion and pick up some of those straggling bristles that might fall into the wet paint here and there. I don't want that to dry into the surface, because that could be a nightmare later on and quite difficult to remove. Now, if I do need more control and precision, like in areas around the eye, for instance, I use some smaller flats and filberts. And if I do require that control, a really lovely brush to use is the Series 278 or 279. This is an imitation animal hair brusher, often mimicking a mongoose hair. It holds its shape really well and will give me the precision that I need for sculpting around eyelashes or providing a little highlight on the bottom eyelid. Honestly, I was so frustrated with the painting up to this point, but from here I started to get quite excited about the possibilities. Now, you might be wondering, why paint a copy? Well, as I said back in the intro, this is my opportunity to learn something new, to stretch and grow and move into a different direction with my painting. For far too long, I've been bogged down in minute detail. And whilst it's really fun to paint in detail, and you certainly do feel that sense of achievement at the end of an epic project, it can be quite tedious. Sometimes you just want to make a statement, throw that paint around, and get something done quickly, but have it done in such a way that mimics those masters like Zorn, or Sorolla, or Sargent, or in this case, Lucy Kemp Welch. I've always admired the art of those masters, but I never painted like them. So I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to give it a go. Now, I'm not saying that I have by any means mastered this technique at all, but what I have done is unlocked a new appreciation and a new sense of understanding, at least some inspiration to carry into my next painting project. I have some ideas in mind that would really lend themselves to this thick painterly application. Now let me take this opportunity to address a couple of things that may come up as a result of posting this video. Firstly, on the projection of the initial painting onto the canvas. Again, as I said, this was a way to get started quickly. I knew that this was going to be a copy, and I wasn't going to try to pass it off as my own work. And I was very clear with myself from the outset as to what the objective was, and that was to do with brushwork. Not necessarily the outline or the drawing, but to just really focus on the quality of those marks that I was making and trying to mimic, as closely as I could, those marks made by Lucy Kemp Welch. Now again, I don't have the original to refer to, but just a few photographs that I took when I was looking at the original at the museum. Now there was a frustration that began to come up in me as I was painting this, of just not understanding how that image was put together. And I wish I could have watched a tutorial that maybe the artist had made. But it's been so long since she passed away, and over 100 years since this particular painting was created, so that just wasn't going to happen. I had to look at those images and try and work out the sequence of marks that I would need to make to create something similar. The brushwork really was the focus, and that's what this exercise was all about. So I removed one of those complications right from the outset to just get on with it, and that was projecting the initial painting. Now with my own work, I'm pretty meticulous with my drawing and my design process. I don't trace photographs, and I make sure I put the time into really planning my compositions. Just go back and watch some of my other videos if you're new here. If you don't believe what I'm saying now, you'll see all sorts of content on my channel about my design process. Now the other thing that I was anticipating may come up is the issue of copyright. Now it does seem that there are some different answers to this particular situation depending on the country or region that you're in. And I've heard multiple versions of this, but generally speaking, you're safe to make a copy or a master copy and sell the work if it falls into what's called the public domain. There are 3 time frames that I've seen over the internet that would allow a work to fit this, and that is 50 years after the artist's death, or 70 years, or 100 years. But this really only comes up if you were to print or to merchandise or to sell this as a work, as a commercial exercise. Now I'm holding on to the painting and I'm using it as a learning exercise personally, and I'm sharing that learning exercise with you. And so this is not something that I feel would come up or become an issue. But let's just say a work did fall in the public domain, then that pretty much means it's fair use. Now, if I have my understanding slightly off here, please correct me in those comments down below. But this is why we would see famous paintings on iPhone covers or tea towels, for instance. The other aspect, and something that I hadn't heard before until one of my subscribers on Patreon pointed it out, which was it's okay to make a copy if you're upfront about the exercise that you're engaged in and that this is not an original work but something as a learning exercise, so long as it's not the exact same size as the original. Now someone might then turn around and claim that this was a forgery, but that would imply deceit on my part. And here, again, I'm being very upfront about what I'm doing. This is not an original work of art. It is a copy of an original. But this is something that was done as a learning exercise by me. So I think if you're looking to do a master copy, as long as you're upfront with your audience or people about what you're doing and you don't try and pass it off as the original work of art or sell it as a long-lost Lucy Kemp Welch original that hasn't been discovered yet, or that this is the genuine article, as long as you're upfront with people about what it is, then I think you're in the clear. But as always, I love to hear from you, so let me know what you think in those comments down below. Now, one of my favorite aspects of this painting was the weeds in the foreground. There was something extraordinary about the way these were painted. How could a weed just add so much life to a painting? And there was something really interesting going on here, and I've said this in other videos, but it appears that Lucy Kemp Welch was very strategic with her detail. Only in certain areas was the painting defined. Most of the foreground was just a series of abstract-looking brush marks. She was very strategic about the placement of more precision. There's something really interesting that happens in the viewer's mind, and that is when detail is observed in one part of the painting, and the rest of it is more or less a loose assortment of brush marks, and then there's another disjointed area of detail. The gaps in the information seem to be filled in, and there appears to be detail throughout, when in actual fact, there's only a little bit of detail scattered here and there. It's something pretty extraordinary when looking at the masters and the way they did this. Now, I personally have the tendency to detail every square inch of my paintings. I'm not as strategic when it comes to the placement of particular elements in the foreground and rendering each object, but this is something that was a huge takeaway for me, and certainly something I was wanting to try in my own paintings. So not defining each and every aspect of the piece, but being more strategic and only doing a little bit here and there. Now, while I'm working in the studio, I keep a couple of iPads attached to my palette table, and I've got the images of the painting open as I'm working. One of them is focused on the whole image, and the other one I zoom in on little areas of detail. And I do this as well when I'm working on my own original paintings. Normally, a reference file for any landscape painting that I'd be working on has got generally a couple of hundred images in that, so having a couple of screens to work with is certainly very handy. Now, after I discovered that trick with the chip brush, I found that the handles were a bit on the short side, so I ended up taping these brushes to one of my older paint brushes to extend the handle. This made some wonky and unbalanced painting applicators, but it did make it a bit more handy. And I took this technique right across the painting, painting some more of the foreground in with these chip brushes. But then it was time to revisit areas in the horse and apply some subtle glazing. Now, because I'm using Winsor and Newton Liquin Original and Liquin Impasto, my paint layers are drying pretty much overnight, and I can work back over the surface after a couple of days. Now, I did paint this directly in one layer, so I can go back over the top after a couple of days and just adjust some areas here and there with some finer details. And this means that I can manipulate ever so slightly that underlying painting without smearing the previous layer of brushwork. Now, some of these I would consider glazes. And when I'm working with lighter colors, my glaze is more or less a dry brush technique. So here I've got a clean chip brush and I'm applying a light glaze of some lighter blue notes for that reflected skylight from above. But I consider this a glaze because it's not completely obliterating or covering in an opaque manner what it's going over. You can still see some of that underlying brushwork. For darker areas, I use a more fluid approach, but I tend to rely on transparent colors and synthetic brushes. I don't rely on copious amounts of medium to achieve a thin glaze. Generally, I won't use more than 1 part medium to 3 parts paint. All up, this master copy took me about 5 days to paint, and I learned so much. I hope you have too. And I hope I've inspired you to try doing a copy of your own. Well, I really hope that you've enjoyed this video and you've come away with some new ideas, and maybe I've inspired you to try a copy or a master copy of your own. This really was an exciting exercise in just pushing myself creatively to just try and loosen up a little bit. It was all about lots of paint, having ample amounts of paint out, but using a bigger brush and just working methodically. This really unlocked something for me when it comes to more expressive brushwork. So I hope this has inspired you to do the same. And again, if you're new here and you like oil painting, then please subscribe to this channel. If you like this video, then click that like button for me. And if you want to come back for more and you want to be notified when I upload another video, then make sure you click that bell notification icon as well. As always, please leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you thought of this video. Now you may be wondering, Andrew, what an awesome hat. Where did you get a hat like that? And can I get one too? Well, you can. And in fact, I've got 4 different hats available. This is official Tisch merch, right? I know they're kind of silly. I'll explain the backstory here, but my patrons over on Patreon. Oh, and incidentally, the video that you just watched, if you want to watch a longer version of this video, then you can find that right now on my Patreon page. It clocks in at over 2 hours long. And in fact, it's not the only 2-hour video that I've uploaded this month to Patreon. There is hours and hours of content that I upload just about every month on my Patreon page. Link is down below. Check it out. It's only $5 a month. More painting content than you can shake a brush at. Now, I have some official merch. My patrons got the first notification of this merch that just landed, and some of them are nearly sold out. What have we got? We got Landscape Champ. Look at that. Isn't that cool? Wouldn't you wear that? I would wear that. I am wearing that. I've got the Monument Valley Landscape Champ hat on. This is Mount Pembroke Blue. No one has the guts to wear this hat. I'm telling you right now, except for one person. And in fact, I haven't really sold that many. Do you even Tisch, bro? What a silly hat. Keeping it real with Cobalt Teal, my favorite color, an essential color if you're painting realism. Keeping it real with Cobalt Teal, and Landscape Champ, Monument Valley Landscape Champ. Link is down below, official Tisch merch if you want to get your hands on some merch. I only have 25 of each of these hats made, and once they're gone, they're gone. I'm not making any more unless I make another design. But of these designs, if you like that sort of thing, then there's only 25 of each. Okay, I'm going to get out of here and get back to painting. It has been an absolute pleasure having your company here. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you again in the next video.